The snow was relentless, a curtain of white velvet descending upon Fifth Avenue. Every crystal seemed to catch and refract the blinding luminescence of the thousands of Christmas lights, turning the famous street into a theatrical stage. It was the heart of Christmas Eve, and New York City pulsed with a frenetic, almost desperate holiday spirit. The air vibrated with the sound of hurried footsteps and the cheerful cacophony of commerce. Shoppers laden with designer bags streamed past. Lovers walked entwined, their breath mingling in the frigid air. Somewhere nearby, the haunting melody of traditional carolers drifted on the wind, singing of silent nights and sacred peace. Vincent Russo stood apart from the rush, a silhouette against the brilliance. His heavy black wool coat was already dusted white, and his exhaled breath billowed into thick clouds, dissipating instantly into the icy atmosphere. He had just secured a landmark expansion deal, one that would cement his firm's presence across 3 new states. Financially, professionally, he was unbeatable. Yet the triumph tasted like ash. A deep, familiar hollowness settled over him, the unwelcome ghost that always arrived with Christmas. It was the annual, brutal reminder of the singular, catastrophic loss he incurred 4 years prior. The day he walked away from the only woman who had ever truly mattered. He turned, ready to retreat into the sterile comfort of his car, and then he saw her. The city's roar instantly compressed into a low hum. Time didn't just stop. It fractured. The snowfall appeared to freeze mid-descent, tiny, perfect sculptures suspended in the golden light. 20 feet away stood Rebecca Hayes. Her auburn hair, richer and perhaps longer than he remembered, spilled over the shoulders of a creamy winter coat. She was breathtakingly familiar. For years had passed. For years of brutal self-inflicted silence, of restless nights and profound regret. But nothing had prepared him for the sudden, visceral shock of seeing her green eyes widen, locking onto his own in instant mutual recognition. Then the tableau shifted. His gaze dropped, drawn by the small hand tightly clasped in Rebecca's. The child could not have been much older than 3. A cascade of bright blonde curls escaped from beneath a cozy pink knit hat. Her cheeks were apple red from the cold, and she hugged a worn, stuffed reindeer tightly against her chest. She was utterly absorbed, pointing animatedly at the mechanized display of dancing elves in the jeweler's window, completely unaware that her mother had just become stone. Vincent felt a massive, painful lurch in his chest, a sensation akin to an electric current hitting his ribs. Driven by an instinct he couldn't name, he started walking. His feet carried him across the slick, snowy sidewalk as if pulled by an invisible, inevitable tether. Rebecca saw him coming and instinctively tightened her grip on the little girl's fingers. They stood face to face for the first time in 1,460 days. Up close, the years were faintly visible. Tiny, delicate lines of tiredness or worry around her luminous green eyes that hadn't been there when he left. Her lips parted slightly, a ghost of the sound she wanted to make, words trapped deep in her throat. He saw everything he had sacrificed, everything he had foolishly traded for success. Vincent. His name was barely audible, a fragile exhalation of sound. Rebecca. The name felt essential, the only truth left in the overwhelming noise of the city, which still seemed muted to his ears. His gaze slid down again to the child. She had stopped chattering and was now staring up at him with unreserved, open curiosity. "Mommy, who's that?" the little girl asked, gently tugging at Rebecca's coat. Rebecca swallowed hard, the movement visible in her slender neck. Vincent watched the internal war waged across her features. The shock, the fear, the agonizing decision she was forced to make in an instant. Her voice, when it came, was fragile. "Emma, this is an old friend of Mommy's." Emma. The name slammed into him like a physical blow. He forced himself to look at the child again, truly look this time. The blonde curls were like Rebecca's mother, he realized. But the eyes, those deep, dark brown eyes that tilted slightly upwards at the corners, they were unmistakable. They were Russo eyes. His sister had them. His mother had them. The truth hit him with the chilling, absolute force of an ice-cold wave. "How old is she?" he heard himself ask, his voice sounding hollow, disconnected, as if speaking through a long tunnel. Rebecca's eyes immediately swam with tears. She bit her lower lip, the familiar, heartbreaking gesture she always made when fighting back a storm of emotion. Vincent, How old, Rebecca? 3. She just turned 3 in September. The simple arithmetic was brutal. 4 years since the break. 3 years and 3 months since Emma's birth. Rebecca had been pregnant when he walked away. Pregnant, and she had never uttered a single word. The pavement seemed to buckle under his expensive Italian leather shoes. All the suppressed Christmas noise, the car horns, the distant laughter, the cheerful music blaring from a nearby boutique, came rushing back, amplified and overwhelming. It was too much. The entire scene was a sensory catastrophe. "You were pregnant," he stated, the words devoid of question, heavy with finality. Rebecca gave a small, defeated nod, a lone tear tracking a path down her flushed cheek. Emma glanced between the two towering adults, her small face scrunching up in adorable confusion, feeling the sharp tension she couldn't possibly comprehend. "There's something you need to know," Rebecca said, suddenly finding a reserve of strength. She quickly wiped her eyes, looked down reassuringly at Emma, and then met Vincent's gaze with new resolve. "Can we go somewhere to talk?" Vincent couldn't articulate a response. He could only stare at this miniature person, his daughter. He had a child. For 3 years he had lived, breathed, and built an empire, utterly oblivious to the existence of this integral part of himself. This small human had been growing, learning, and thriving, and he had been absent for every second of it. Emma tugged insistently on his coat, making him start. She smiled up at him, revealing a gap where a front tooth should have been. "I like your coat. It's fancy. Are you really rich like the people on TV?" Despite the seismic shock, the burgeoning anger, and the paralyzing confusion, Vincent felt an involuntary twitch at the corner of his mouth. He sank down onto his knees on the cold, snowy sidewalk, bringing himself to her level. This close, the resemblance was unmistakable, brutally clear. She had his distinct nose, the shape of his jawline. How had he not seen it instantly? "What's your name?" Emma asked, tilting her head, observing him with intense scrutiny. "Vincent," he managed, his throat tight. "What's yours?" Emma Rosehaze. "I'm 3.5. Actually, my birthday was in September, but I tell people 3 because half is hard to show with fingers." She held up 3 perfect fingers, then struggled to articulate the concept of half, frowning deeply at the difficulty. A profound, painful ache cracked open inside Vincent's chest. She was perfect, utterly, uniquely perfect, and he had forfeited everything. Her first precarious steps, her babbling first words, her first birthday cake. All of it was irrevocably gone. He rose slowly, his eyes never leaving Rebecca's face. She was weeping openly now, silent tears streaming down her cheeks, as she watched his fraught interaction with their daughter. Their daughter. The phrase was alien and yet instantly, profoundly right. "We need to talk," he ground out, his voice hoarse with suppressed emotion. "I know," Rebecca whispered. Emma looked up at both of them, then declared with the unassailable confidence only a 3-year-old possesses. "You should come see our Christmas tree. Mommy let me put the star on top all by myself this year." Vincent's jaw tightened painfully. Their Christmas tree. Their home. A fully realized life he knew nothing about. "Emma. Sweetie, Mr. Vincent is probably busy," Rebecca began, trying to mitigate the situation. "I'm not busy," Vincent interrupted, his voice resonating with authority. He looked at Rebecca, forcing eye contact, and saw the raw fear in her expression. Fear of his reaction. Fear of his judgment. Fear that he would simply walk away, as he had 4 years before. "I am not busy at all. I want to hear everything." Rebecca nodded slowly, her hand visibly trembling as she wiped the tears from her eyes once more. "There's a coffee shop around the corner. It should be quiet enough." They walked in charged silence, Emma skipping happily between them, her new stuffed reindeer bobbing with every step. She chattered incessantly about the logistics of Santa, detailing how she had been extra good this year to guarantee the dollhouse she wanted. and boasting that her teacher, Miss Caroline, said she was the best colorer in the class, always staying inside the lines. Vincent drank in every single word, like a man dying of thirst finally finding water. He studied the way her small nose crinkled when she dissolved into laughter, the slight lisp when she navigated certain consonants, a result of the missing tooth, the way she instinctively reached for Rebecca's hand when they navigated a curb, her tiny fingers wrapping around her mother's in a gesture of absolute, innocent trust. This was his child, his blood, his enduring responsibility, and Rebecca had shouldered the entire weight of it alone for nearly 4 agonizing years. The coffee shop was mercifully sparse. Only a tired barista polishing the counter and a silent elderly couple nestled in a booth. Rebecca ordered a rich hot chocolate for Emma and a large black coffee for herself. Vincent said nothing. His mind was too choked with immediate, pressing questions to even consider caffeine. They settled at a small table by the window. Emma immediately immersed herself in her drink, meticulous about harvesting the mini marshmallows and consuming them one by one. The silence between the adults stretched, heavy and suffocating with the mass of unspoken history. Rebecca broke it first, her voice a fragile admission. "I'm sorry." Vincent's hands clenched into white-knuckled fists on the tabletop. "You're sorry? You concealed my daughter from me for 3 years, and that's what you lead with? You left." Rebecca shot back, her eyes suddenly flashing with fierce defensive anger. "You left to construct your empire. You explicitly told me you couldn't give me the life I deserved. You said you had to focus on business without distractions. Do you remember that? What precisely was I supposed to do? Call you up and say, 'Hey, I know you just obliterated everything we had, but surprise, I'm pregnant?'" "Yes," Vincent hissed through tightly clenched teeth, struggling to keep his voice dangerously low so Emma wouldn't hear the fury vibrating beneath the surface. "That's precisely what you should have done. You made your choice," Rebecca countered, her chin lifting defiantly. "I made mine." Emma looked up at them both, the white ring of a hot chocolate mustache making her appear even more guileless. "Why are you guys talking angry?" Rebecca's expression instantly dissolved into maternal softness. She leaned over and tenderly wiped Emma's upper lip with a napkin. "We're not angry, sweetie. We're just having a very intense grown-up conversation." Emma considered this weighty statement for a moment, shrugged, and returned to the serious business of marshmallow consumption, apparently accepting the adult evasion. Vincent forced a long, shuddering breath. Fury would accomplish nothing now. He required clarity. He required answers. And more crucially, he had to define the next steps, because one reality was now absolute. He was not walking away. Not this time. Not ever again. "Tell me everything," he insisted quietly. "I want to know every detail." Rebecca studied him for a long moment, trying to gauge if his resolution was sincere or just a temporary rush of shock. Whatever she discerned in the granite set of his features must have convinced her, because she nodded and began speaking. "I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you left." Rebecca wrapped both hands around her coffee mug, a gesture Vincent knew had less to do with seeking warmth and more to do with needing something solid to anchor herself to. Emma quietly hummed a fragmented Christmas carol between sips, utterly oblivious to the profound weight of her mother's imminent confession. "I took 3 tests," Rebecca continued, her voice gaining a soft, steady rhythm. "I kept praying they were wrong, that it was a catastrophic mistake, but they all confirmed the same thing. Pregnant 2 to 3 weeks. She looked up at Vincent, and he saw the naked vulnerability in her eyes. "I sat on my cold bathroom floor for 2 hours, just trying to process what I should do." Vincent's jaw tightened again, but he kept the question of why she hadn't called silent. He knew the answer intimately. He had left. He had declared that he needed to construct something grand, something worthy of her. He had walked away promising to return only when he was the man she deserved. He had been so single-mindedly focused on becoming someone important that he hadn't realized he was already everything she needed just by being himself. "I picked up the phone at least 100 times, Rebecca whispered, as if effortlessly tracking his self-recrimination. "I had your number memorized. I would start dialing, and then I would remember your exact words, that you needed time, that you had to focus on building your business without distractions. I couldn't bear to be the thing that held you back. You were never a distraction, Vincent said roughly, the lie of his past echoing painfully. You were everything. Rebecca's eyes glistened again. That's not what it felt like when you packed your bags and left. Emma suddenly broke her silence, announcing cheerfully that her drink was finished. Mommy, can I go look at the toys over there? She pointed to a small, brightly lit display near the counter featuring wooden puzzles and coloring books. Rebecca glanced over, confirming the area was fully within view, and nodded permission. Stay where I can see you, baby. Okay. Emma bounced off, her energy seemingly limitless despite the late hour. With Emma safely out of earshot, Rebecca leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial level. I was scared, Vincent. Terrified, actually. I was 24, working barely above minimum wage as a graphic designer, struggling to make rent. And you were gone, building something dangerous, something I didn't fully comprehend, but I knew it was dragging you into a world I couldn't possibly follow. You should have told me, Vincent repeated, but the harsh edge had fled his voice, replaced by a deep, weary understanding of the impossible position she had faced. Maybe, Rebecca admitted, her shoulders slumping slightly. But I made a choice. I decided that if you were going to leave to build your empire, then I would build something too. I would build a life for our baby. I worked 2 jobs throughout my pregnancy. I squirreled away every single penny. I moved into a minuscule apartment. I did what I had to do. Admiration battled fiercely with his internal anger. She had been incredibly strong, demonstrating a resilience he had only just begun to develop in his business ventures. But that strength had cost him a piece of his history he could never recover. The birth, he said hoarsely. Tell me about the birth. Rebecca's expression softened instantly, a tiny, genuine smile curving her lips despite the lingering wetness in her eyes. September 14th. 7 in the morning. 12 hours of hellish labor. She came out screaming bloody murder. But the moment they placed her small, warm body on my chest, she stopped crying and just looked at me with these massive, dark eyes. She paused, the smile fading. Your eyes. Vincent had to look away again, fixing his gaze on Emma, who was now meticulously examining a wooden train set, her small fingers tracing the contours of the wheels. He had missed that transformative moment. The precise second his daughter had entered the world, the moment that cleaved his past life from her present one. I almost called you that day, Rebecca continued, her voice thick with memory. I was holding her, and she was so perfect, and all I could think was that you deserved to know, that she deserved a father. But then I looked at my phone, and I saw something you'd posted online. A picture from some exclusive business gala. You were in a perfectly tailored suit, surrounded by serious, important-looking people, and you looked so remote, so far removed from the Vincent I had known. I convinced myself you had completely moved on, that you were living the powerful life you truly wanted. I never moved on, Vincent contradicted, turning back to her with sudden intensity. The words exploded from him. Not for a single day. Every contract, every meeting, every so-called success, it was all about you. I built everything with the deluded notion that someday I would be good enough to come back, to prove I could offer you the world. Rebecca's breath hitched. You were always good enough. They held the gaze across the small table, the accumulated years of missed communication and opportunities hanging heavy and palpable. Vincent saw the woman he still desperately loved staring back at him with the same fierce intensity he felt. Nothing had changed between them, but irrevocably, everything had changed because of the small child playing nearby. Emma came skipping back, proudly clutching a small wooden reindeer. Mommy, can we get this, please? I'll be extra, super good. Rebecca quickly wiped her face and examined the toy. It's $15, Emma. That's a lot of money. I'll buy it. Vincent interjected immediately, reaching for his substantial leather wallet. Vincent, no, Rebecca started, shaking her head. Please, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Let me do this. Let me do something. Rebecca hesitated, then offered a small, tearful nod of acceptance. Emma squealed with unrestrained delight and threw her small arms around Vincent's leg, hugging him tightly. Vincent froze, completely blindsided by the devastating wave of emotion this simple, innocent embrace triggered. He carefully placed his large hand on her small back, feeling how fragile and tiny she was. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," Emma sang joyfully. Vincent paid for the wooden reindeer quickly, while Emma happily dictated its future. She would name it Jingle, and it would be Rudolph's best friend. When they returned to the table, Emma climbed into the seat between them, holding both reindeer and making them dance. "She's beautiful," Vincent said, watching his daughter play. "She's perfect. She asks about her father sometimes," Rebecca said quietly. "I've always told her that her daddy loves her very much, but he lives far away and is very busy. I didn't ever want her to think she wasn't wanted." Vincent's throat tightened painfully. What else does she know? Nothing specific. Just that she has a daddy somewhere who thinks about her. "I have a photo of you from before. Sometimes she asks to see it." Rebecca pulled out her phone and showed him. It was a picture he had completely forgotten. He and Rebecca on a sunny beach, his arm draped easily over her shoulders, both of them caught in a moment of genuine laughter. He remembered that day. It had felt flawless. "You kept that?" Vincent asked, stunned. "I kept everything," Rebecca admitted, meeting his gaze steadily. "Couldn't let you go." "Not completely." Emma suddenly looked up at Vincent with those impossibly dark, tilting eyes. "Or are you my daddy?" The question landed like a physical punch. Vincent looked to Rebecca, who had gone instantly pale. This moment had not been planned. They hadn't agreed on how to tell her. But Emma was waiting, staring with a child's perfect, brutal intuition, and Vincent knew he couldn't lie. "Would you like me to be?" he asked carefully, trying to keep the desperation from his tone. Emma considered this immense proposition very seriously, her small brow furrowing in concentration. "Do you like hot chocolate?" Vincent blinked at the unexpected criteria. "Yes." "Do you like Christmas?" "Very much." "Do you like my mommy?" Vincent's eyes found Rebecca's, conveying 4 years of longing in the gaze. "More than anything in the world." Emma's face broke into a glorious, gap-toothed smile. "Then okay, you can be my daddy." Rebecca let out a sound that was half a hysterical laugh, half a raw sob. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. Vincent felt a fierce burn behind his own eyes. Just like that, as if it were the most natural, simplest thing in the world. As if 3 years of agonizing absence could be instantly bridged by shared affection for hot chocolate, Christmas, and love for her mother. "Emma," Rebecca said, her voice shaking violently. "Honey, this is something we need to discuss a little more. Okay? It's complicated." "Why?" Emma asked, confused. "He said he likes you. You're always sad on Christmas. Maybe you need a daddy too." Vincent couldn't suppress it. He laughed. It was the first honest, true sound he had made in years, and it felt like shattering a thick layer of ice. Rebecca was laughing too, even as she cried, shaking her head in amazement at their daughter's impeccable, innocent logic. "She's not wrong," Vincent said, looking intently at Rebecca, an intensity that made her breath catch. "Maybe you do need someone." The atmosphere shifted completely, charged with unspoken possibility. Rebecca's cheeks flushed a beautiful red, and Vincent felt the familiar, magnetic pull between them that had never truly severed. For years apart, and his body still responded to her presence like a compass needle finding true north. Emma let out a sudden, enormous yawn, a sound too big for her small body. She leaned heavily against Rebecca's arm, her eyelids drooping rapidly. "I'm sleepy." Rebecca checked her delicate wristwatch. "It's almost 9. Way past bedtime." She looked at Vincent, uncertainty clouding her features once more. "We should go." "Where do you live?" Vincent asked immediately. "Brooklyn, about 30 minutes from here. It's Christmas Eve. The trains will be packed. Let me drive you." Rebecca started to protest, but Emma was already sinking into sleep against her side, and Rebecca looked utterly exhausted herself. "Okay," she finally conceded, her shoulders dropping in defeat. "Thank you." Vincent efficiently called his driver while Rebecca bundled up the nearly unconscious Emma. The little girl barely stirred, already deep in the gentle world of sleep. When they stepped back into the snowy night, Vincent's long, black sedan was idling silently at the curb. Marcus, his driver, opened the door without a word, his expression perfectly neutral despite the obvious curiosity about the sudden addition of a woman and child. Rebecca slid into the plush back seat, Emma immediately curling up with her head resting in her mother's lap. Vincent sat across from them, unable to tear his gaze away from the perfect picture they created. His family. The thought was still staggering, unbelievable. As the car glided through the snow-slicked streets, the Christmas lights blurring into streaks of color outside the windows, Vincent watched Rebecca's fingers gently stroke Emma's blonde hair. The touch was exquisitely tender, saturated with years of maternal love and solitary sacrifice. She had navigated every sleepless night, every fear, every single one of those crucial milestones alone. "I want to be part of her life," Vincent stated into the quiet sanctity of the car. "I want to be part of both of your lives." Rebecca looked up at him, her hand freezing in Emma's hair. "Vincent, you don't understand how much." "My world will adapt," he said firmly, cutting her off. "I built an empire. I can certainly rebuild my life around what truly matters. She is my daughter. And you," he paused, letting the weight of his chosen words settle. "You are the only woman I have ever loved. I am not leaving again. Not this time." Rebecca's eyes filled with a fresh well of tears. "It's been 4 years. We're different people now." Vincent leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, deliberately bridging the physical space between them. "Are we? Because when I look at you, I see the exact same woman I fell in love with. The woman I've dreamed about every night. The woman I built this entire, meaningless empire for, even if I was too blind and stupid to realize it at the time." "Vincent," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve a second chance," he continued, pressing his advantage. "I know I made unforgivable mistakes, but I am asking anyway. Let me know my daughter. Let me prove I can be worthy. The man you both need." The black car glided silently to a halt outside a low, pre-war apartment building in a quiet corner of Brooklyn. It was modest, certainly nothing like the high-rise glass towers Vincent frequented. Rebecca looked past the driver's partition, then back at Vincent, her expression a careful mixture of exhaustion and anxiety. Emma stirred slightly in her arms, letting out a small, sleepy murmur that sounded vaguely like Santa. "Tomorrow," Rebecca said, her voice soft but firm, finalizing the arrangement. "Come for dinner tomorrow. We can talk more properly then. You can spend time with Emma when she's actually awake." She managed a small, tired smile that nonetheless made Vincent's chest ache. "She's a lot more energetic when she's not half asleep." "Tomorrow." Vincent committed the word to memory, feeling a fierce, sudden hope bloom in his chest. "What time?" "We usually eat early on Christmas." Vincent nodded, etching the time and location permanently into his mind. Marcus, the driver, silently opened the door. Rebecca carefully gathered Emma and prepared to step out. Vincent followed immediately, unable to watch them disappear without assistance. He took the bags of new toys, the bounty they had accumulated throughout the chaotic evening, and helped hold the heavy outer door of the building open for her. At the threshold, Rebecca turned back. The entrance was framed by cheap, twinkling Christmas lights, and in their soft, multicolored glow, she looked breathtakingly fragile, almost unreal. "Vincent," she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the hum of the city night. "I never stopped loving you either." Before he could breathe, before the admission could fully register in his stunned mind, she stepped inside, the door sighing shut behind her, taking Emma and the ethereal vision of Rebecca with it. Vincent stood frozen in the lightly falling snow, staring at the closed door marked 3B on the intercom panel. His heart was a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. He finally stumbled back into the luxury of the car, his mind a hurricane of disbelief and fierce joy. Marcus glanced at him in the rearview mirror, a single, professionally discreet question in his eyes. "Home, sir." Vincent reached up and touched his cheek, surprised by the cold dampness. He was crying. Actual tears, streaming down his face. He could not recall the last time he had cried. Not since he was a boy, perhaps. He could not recall a time when emotion had overwhelmed him with such raw force. Yeah, he managed, his voice rough and uneven. Home. As the car pulled away from the curb, Vincent twisted in his seat, looking back at the modest building that now held his entire world. Somewhere up there, behind those brick walls, was his daughter, his Emma, and the woman he never should have walked away from. Tomorrow could not arrive fast enough. Vincent did not sleep that night. His penthouse, usually a sanctuary of controlled quiet, became a cage of nervous energy. He paced, then launched himself into obsessive research. He spent hours online searching for information about 3-year-olds. Developmental milestones, popular toys, appropriate discipline, what they liked, what they needed, what made them laugh. He devoured dense articles about early childhood development and watched endless, slightly grainy videos of fathers playing with their daughters, trying desperately to absorb 3 lost years in a single night. By the time the icy gray dawn broke on Christmas morning, he had filled an entire leather-bound notepad with frantic, messy notes, ideas, and questions he had no one to ask. Dinner was not until 5 p.m. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Vincent was already showered, dressed in a new cashmere sweater, and pacing the length of his vast apartment. 9 hours. 9 hours felt like an eternity stretching before him. He called his sister, Sophia, at 8:30 a.m., knowing that with her own 2 small, hyperactive kids, she would already be up, managing the Christmas morning chaos. "Merry Christmas, Big Brother," Sophia answered cheerfully, the sounds of ripped wrapping paper and excited shrieks echoing in the background. "Please tell me you're coming to Mom's later. She made enough food to feed an army and keeps asking when you'll arrive." "I can't make it today," Vincent said, the words catching in his throat. Something came up on Christmas. Vincent, what could possibly be more important than, "I have a daughter." Silence. Complete, absolute silence descended on the other end of the line. Even the distant shrieks of his niece and nephew seemed to cease. "Sophia? I'm sorry. What?" His sister's voice had gone up a full octave, laced with shock. "You have a what?" Vincent told her everything, quickly and unevenly. The chance encounter with Rebecca on the street, the shock of seeing Emma, the devastating realization of the 3 years he had missed. When he finally finished, Sophia was audibly crying. "Oh my God, Vincent, a daughter. You have a daughter?" She sniffled loudly, the shock giving way to pure, overwhelming emotion. "What's her name?" "Emma. Emma Rose. That's beautiful. Does she look like you?" "She has my eyes. Rebecca's hair." Vincent paused, the practical panic setting in again. "Sophia, I need your help. What do I bring? What does a 3-year-old want for Christmas?" His sister laughed through her tears, a joyful, watery sound. "You're really doing this. You're really going to be a dad. I already am one. I just need to catch up." Sophia, now fully in big sister logistics mode, helped him assemble a comprehensive list. She then made him promise, with absolute seriousness, to bring Emma and Rebecca to meet the whole loud, overwhelming Italian family soon. Vincent agreed, though the thought of that introduction sent a fresh wave of nerves through him. One step at a time. By 10 a.m., Vincent was fighting his way through the absolute chaos of a massive, post-Christmas Eve hangover of exhausted consumerism at a flagship toy store. Parents everywhere looked harried. Children screamed with both joy and frustration, and the employees looked like they were plotting early retirement. Vincent moved through the aisles with cold, calculated purpose, picking up everything Sophia had suggested and then some. A large, ornate dollhouse, professional-grade art supplies, stacks of colorful books, an absurd menagerie of stuffed animals, elaborate building blocks, and an entire trunk of dress-up clothes complete with sparkling princess crowns and shimmering fairy wings. "Sir, would you like a cart?" an employee asked weakly, eyeing the impossibly growing pile in Vincent's arms. "Yes, actually," Vincent replied. "Make it 2 carts." By the time he left the store, Vincent had spent over $3,000. He did not care. He felt a desperate obligation. He had 3 Christmases to make up for, and this was just the beginning of his penance. His next stop was a famous local bakery, where he remembered Rebecca used to crave their exquisite pain au chocolate. He bought an entire decorative box of chocolate croissants. Then he found a quiet flower shop. He purchased 2 bouquets, a stunning arrangement of deep red roses for Rebecca, and, after consulting the wise florist for guidance, a smaller, vibrant arrangement of white and yellow daisies for Emma, because the woman assured him that little girls adore daisies. At 4:30 p.m., 30 minutes early, Vincent stood outside Rebecca's building. He was surrounded by a precarious stack of bags and boxes. Marcus, the driver, had reluctantly helped haul everything up from the car and now waited discreetly downstairs. Vincent found himself staring intensely at the door marked 3B, his heart hammering in a mixture of terror and anticipation. He knocked. Footsteps sounded immediately from within, light and quick. Then Emma's bright, excited voice pierced the door. "Mommy, someone's here." The door swung inward. Rebecca stood there, wearing a dark green sweater and comfortable jeans. Her hair pulled back into a simple ponytail that somehow made her look impossibly young and familiar. She was beautiful, and the recognition hurt. Her eyes widened, taking in the mountain of packages surrounding Vincent. "Vincent," she breathed, stunned. "What did you do?" "Merry Christmas," he said, suddenly feeling entirely awkward and foolish, holding the 2 bouquets like shields. "I might have gone a little overboard." Emma shot past her mother, her eyes going wide and huge at the sight of the presents. "Are those all presents? Are they for me?" "Emma, manners," Rebecca gently chided, but she was fighting a wide smile. "Most of them are for you," Vincent confirmed, crouching down awkwardly to meet Emma's level. "I had 3 Christmases to catch up on. I hope that's okay." Emma looked quickly at her mother for permission, then back at Vincent, then let out a shriek so loud and piercing that Vincent actually worried about his eardrums. She launched herself at him, wrapping her tiny arms tightly around his neck. Vincent carefully hugged her back, overwhelmed by the instinctive, natural fit of her small body against his. "Best Christmas ever," Emma declared into his ear. Rebecca helped Vincent maneuver the immense hall inside. The apartment was small but immediately cozy, decorated with obvious, loving care. A modest, slightly uneven Christmas tree stood in the corner, covered in colorful, clearly handmade ornaments. Stockings hung from the windowsill, and the air was thick with the comforting, savory scent of something delicious cooking. "I made pot roast," Rebecca said, following his gaze toward the small kitchen. "I hope that's okay. There's nothing fancy." "It's perfect," Vincent said genuinely. Honestly, everything about this place, the warm light, the homemade decorations, felt perfect. It was a home, something his minimalist penthouse with its expensive furniture and sterile city views had never been. Emma was already tearing into the wrapping paper with frantic energy, her excited shrieks filling every corner of the apartment. She pulled out the dollhouse first, gasping dramatically. "Mommy, look. It's the one from the store. The one I showed you." Rebecca's eyes met Vincent's across the pile of tissue paper, a deep complexity of gratitude and worry in her gaze. "Vincent, this is too much." "It's not enough," he said quietly, meaning it. "It will never be enough." For the next hour, Vincent sat cross-legged on the floor with Emma, carefully helping her set up the complex, multi-story dollhouse. She narrated elaborate stories about the tiny family that lived inside, assigning distinct, high-pitched voices to each character. Vincent found himself completely absorbed, adding his own silly suggestions and making her giggle with ridiculously deep character voices. Rebecca watched them from the couch, her expression soft and relaxed. At one point, Emma insisted that Vincent play the daddy doll, while she played the mommy doll, and a small little girl doll. They acted out a charmingly simple scene where the family had breakfast together, and Vincent felt his chest tighten with the simple, heartbreaking reality of the domestic scene. "Now the daddy has to go to work," Emma announced, making the tiny male figure walk toward the miniature door. "Does he have to go?" Vincent asked, playing along, his voice husky. "Yes, but he comes back," Emma said seriously, looking up at him with immense concentration. Daddy's always come back. The innocent conviction of the statement hit Vincent harder than any accusation could have. He glanced at Rebecca, whose eyes were suddenly bright with unshed tears. This was the narrative Emma had been given, that daddies had obligations but always returned. Vincent silently vowed that he would make that narrative true. Okay, Emma, Rebecca said, her voice slightly thick. Time to wash hands for dinner. Emma protested briefly but obeyed, skipping off to the small bathroom. Vincent stood, his knees aching, unaccustomed to sitting on the floor. He wasn't used to this, but he wanted desperately to get used to it. She loves you already, Rebecca said softly, standing up. She's never been like this with anyone. She usually takes weeks to warm up. She's incredible, Vincent said, looking at the door Emma had disappeared through. Rebecca, I can't believe you raised her alone. She's so smart and funny and kind. You did an amazing job. Rebecca's cheeks flushed slightly at the genuine praise. I did my best. It was more than enough. They stared at each other, the air between them suddenly charged with 4 years of unspoken feelings and regrets. Vincent took a decisive step closer, closing some of the distance. Rebecca, I meant what I said yesterday. I want to be here for Emma. I want to be here for you. I know it won't be easy. I know we have a lot to figure out, but I'm not going anywhere this time. Your work, Rebecca started, the old anxiety coloring her voice. The things you're involved in are not more important than this, Vincent interrupted, stepping closer still. I've already started making changes. I have people who can handle the day-to-day operations. I can step back from the dangerous parts. I want to be a father, Rebecca. I want to be someone Emma can be proud of. She already is, Rebecca whispered, her eyes fixed on his. She hasn't stopped smiling since you got here. Vincent reached up slowly, giving Rebecca ample time to pull away if she chose. When she remained still, he gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing her soft cheekbone. And what about you? Are you happy I'm here? Rebecca's breath hitched, a tiny, ragged sound. Yes, she admitted, tears finally spilling over. I'm terrified, but yes, I'm back, Emma announced, running back into the room, her small hands still glistening slightly from the soap. She was bouncing everywhere. Can Vink sit next to me at dinner? Rebecca stepped back immediately, breaking the intense moment, but her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were shining. Of course he can, baby. Dinner was chaotic and wonderfully messy. Emma talked nonstop, telling Vincent about her preschool, her best friend Lily, her teacher, and her current favorite cartoon. She proudly demonstrated her ability to count to 20 and showed off her perfect spelling of her own name. Every few minutes, she would reach over and pat Vincent's hand, a small, proprietorial gesture, as if confirming he was still securely in place. Vincent absorbed every detail, every fact. He learned that Emma hated broccoli but enthusiastically loved carrots, that she was afraid of the dark but utterly brave about everything else, that she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up because of her fierce love of animals, that her favorite color was definitively purple, not pink, even though everyone always assumed pink. After dinner, they settled down to watch a classic Christmas movie. Emma insisted on sitting exactly between Vincent and Rebecca on the couch, holding both their hands tightly. Halfway through the movie, she climbed into Vincent's lap, resting her head against his chest. Vincent froze, utterly rigid, afraid to move a muscle and disturb her. Rebecca smiled at his obvious discomfort, mouthing the words, "You're doing fine." Vincent carefully, tentatively wrapped his arms around Emma, feeling her small body relax completely against him. She smelled sweetly of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. His throat tightened with emotion so potent it was almost painful. This was his daughter, his little girl, and she trusted him implicitly. By the time the movie ended, Emma was sound asleep. Vincent held her carefully as Rebecca led the way to Emma's bedroom. It was small but cheerful, painted a pale yellow with dozens of glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling. Drawings, clearly Emma's exuberant artwork, covered the walls. Rebecca pulled back the covers, and Vincent gently laid Emma down. She stirred slightly, mumbling something indistinguishable about reindeer, then immediately settled back into deep sleep. Rebecca tucked her in, kissing her forehead. Vincent stood awkwardly by the door, unsure what his next move should be. "You can kiss her good night," Rebecca whispered, indicating the door cracked open. "She won't mind." Vincent leaned down and pressed the softest kiss to Emma's forehead, his hand trembling slightly as he did so. "Good night, sweetheart," he whispered. They left the room quietly. In the living room, the silence felt heavy and charged. Vincent picked up his coat, a signal that his time was up, but Rebecca reached out and touched his arm, stopping him. "Stay," she said. "Just for a little while. We should talk." Vincent immediately set his coat back down. They sat on the couch, maintaining a careful, yet shrinking distance between them. Outside, the light snowfall had resumed, the flakes visible in the yellow glow of the street lights. "Thank you for today," Rebecca said, finally breaking the silence. "You made her so incredibly happy." "She made me happy too," Vincent replied, turning to face her. "I didn't know I could feel like this, Rebecca. Like everything finally makes sense." Rebecca smiled sadly. "I felt that way the day she was born. Like suddenly I understood exactly what I was supposed to be doing with my life." "Why didn't you tell me?" Vincent asked, his tone not accusatory, just needing honest closure. "Really? I know what you said yesterday, but there has to be more to it." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. "I was angry," she finally admitted, looking at her hands. "You left me, Vincent. You said you loved me and then you walked away. I was hurt and stubborn. And when I found out I was pregnant, part of me thought it served you right to miss out. That you made your choice and you had to live with it." She wiped quickly at her eyes. "I know that was wrong. I know I should have told you anyway. But I was 24 and scared and trying desperately to figure out how to survive. It was easier to be angry than to admit how much I missed you." Vincent moved closer, taking her hand gently in his. "I'm sorry I left. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I needed to be more successful, more established, more worthy of you. I was an idiot. We both made mistakes," Rebecca conceded, squeezing his hand. "But we have a chance now. A chance to do better for Emma." "For Emma," Vincent agreed. "And for us?" Rebecca looked down at their joined hands, tracing the lines of his knuckles. "I don't know, Vincent. 4 years is a long time. We're not the same people we were. Aren't we?" Vincent shifted even closer, his free hand coming up to tilt her chin, so she had to look directly into his eyes. "Because I look at you and I feel exactly the same way I did 4 years ago. Like you're the only person in the world who matters. Like I would move mountains just to make you smile." "Vincent," Rebecca breathed. He leaned in slowly, watching her eyes intensely. They were so close he could feel her shallow, quick breaths on his lips. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, his voice low and gravelly. "Tell me this is too fast, too soon, and I'll back off. But Rebecca, I need you to know, I never stopped loving you. Not for a single moment. I never stopped either," she whispered back. Vincent closed the final distance, his lips meeting hers softly. Rebecca made a small, choked sound, her hand coming up to grip the fabric of his sweater. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like they were two strangers cautiously rediscovering a familiar language. Then Rebecca leaned into him, and the kiss deepened, for years of longing and regret pouring into the passionate connection. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I've missed you so much." "I've missed you too," Rebecca admitted. "Every single day." They sat there in the warm, diffused glow of the Christmas tree lights, holding each other tightly, neither wanting to let go. Vincent felt a fundamental shift inside him. This was what he had been searching for all along. Not power, not success, not respect. Just this, a woman he loved and a daughter who made everything else worthwhile. "Mommy." They jumped apart guiltily. Emma stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes sleepily, clutching her reindeer stuffed animal. "I had a bad dream." Rebecca immediately went to her, scooping her small, warm body up. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." Emma looked over Rebecca's shoulder at Vincent, her gaze still hazy. "Is Vincent still here?" I'm still here, Vincent confirmed, walking over to them. Good, Emma said, yawning widely. I don't want you to leave. Vincent felt his heart crack open entirely. He gently touched Emma's soft, fine hair. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Promise. Emma smiled sleepily, then reached out for Vincent, an unmistakable demand. Surprised, he took her from Rebecca's arms. She immediately snuggled against his chest, wrapping her little arms around his neck, utterly trusting. You're warm, she mumbled into his collar. Vincent looked at Rebecca, helpless and overwhelmed by this tiny, trusting person in his arms. Rebecca smiled back, her eyes shining with unshed, happy tears. Come on, she said quietly. Let's get her back to bed. Vincent carried Emma back to her room, marveling at how light she was, how perfectly she fit against him. Rebecca pulled back the covers again, but when Vincent tried to lay Emma down, she held on to him with surprising strength. Stay, she mumbled, half asleep, her voice already fading. Please. Vincent looked at Rebecca, seeking permission. Rebecca simply nodded, her expression tender. He carefully climbed onto the small twin bed, Emma still securely in his arms. She settled against him with a deep, contented sigh. Rebecca covered them both with a thick, cozy blanket. Then, to Vincent's profound surprise, she climbed into the bed on Emma's other side. They lay there, Emma soundly asleep between them, the three of them fitting together like perfectly matched pieces of a puzzle. Vincent reached across Emma and found Rebecca's hand. She squeezed back, her grip firm and meaningful. Merry Christmas, Emma mumbled, already drifting back into slumber. Merry Christmas, baby, Rebecca whispered. Vincent looked at his daughter, then at the woman he loved, and felt complete for the first time in 4 long years. Whatever happened next, whatever formidable challenges they faced, they would face them together, and that certainty was worth more than any empire he could ever build. Vincent woke to bright sunlight streaming through the pale yellow curtains and the sensation of a small, insistent finger poking his cheek. He opened his eyes to find Emma's dark eyes mere inches from his, studying him intently. You're still here, she announced, sounding extremely pleased with this discovery. I'm still here, Vincent confirmed, his voice rough with sleep. He glanced to the other side of the bed. Rebecca was gone, but he could hear movement in the distance and smell the rich aroma of coffee brewing and butter melting. Mommy's making pancakes, Emma informed him, sitting up suddenly. She only makes pancakes on special days. Is today special? Every day with you is special, Vincent said, making Emma dissolve into giggles. She climbed over him to get out of the bed, accidentally elbowing him hard in the stomach. Vincent grunted, startled, but he couldn't stop the wide smile that spread across his face. This, he realized, was what normal fathers experienced every single morning. The beautiful chaos and immediate joy of a child who did not understand the concept of personal space. He found Rebecca in the kitchen. Her hair was still messy from sleep, and she was wearing an oversized, comfortable sweater and leggings. She looked wonderfully, domestically beautiful. She turned when she heard him, a genuine, soft smile spreading across her face. Good morning, she said softly. I was going to wake you, but you looked so peaceful. I haven't slept that well in years, Vincent admitted. It was profoundly true. Despite the cramped bed and Emma's tendency to sprawl out like a starfish, he had slept deeply and dreamlessly. Emma appeared, grabbing Vincent firmly by the hand. Come on, you have to sit next to me again. The morning passed in a blur of syrupy pancakes, Emma's constant, breathless chatter, and stolen, meaningful glances between Vincent and Rebecca. When Emma was finally distracted, engrossed in setting up her new dollhouse, Rebecca pulled Vincent aside. I have to work tomorrow, she said apologetically. I took vacation days for Christmas, but I'm back in the office on the 26th. What do you do? Vincent realized, with a jolt, the absurdity of their situation. 4 years apart meant so many essential gaps to fill. I'm a senior graphic designer at a marketing firm. It's good work. Flexible hours so I can pick Emma up from preschool. She paused, mirroring his previous question. What about you? What exactly do you do now? Vincent chose his words carefully, knowing the truth was complex and potentially frightening. I run several businesses, import, export, real estate investments. Some of it is complicated. Some of it, he admitted, meeting her eyes steadily, is in areas I'm not proud of. But I'm making changes. Substantial ones. I want to be someone Emma can look up to. Rebecca studied him for a long, quiet moment, searching his face. I believe you, Mommy. Emma called from the living room, startling them both. Can we go see the Christmas lights today, please? Rebecca laughed, shaking her head. It's not even noon yet, Emma. But they're so pretty, and Vincent hasn't seen them with us. Vincent felt his heart squeeze at the casual way Emma now included him, as if he had been a fixture in their lives forever. I would love to see the Christmas lights. So, that afternoon, they bundled up warmly and took the subway to Diker Heights, the famous Brooklyn neighborhood where residents went all out with elaborate, competition-level Christmas displays. Emma held both their hands, swinging joyfully between them, her excited voice carrying easily over the bustling crowd. The displays were spectacular. Houses were covered in thousands upon thousands of twinkling lights. Animated figures danced across lawns, and entire front yards were transformed into winter wonderland spectacles. Emma stopped at every single one, gasping and pointing out her favorites. That one has penguins, she squealed. And that one has a whole carousel. Mommy, look, that Santa is waving. Vincent found himself laughing more freely and genuinely than he had in years. Emma's pure, uncomplicated enthusiasm was utterly infectious. At one particularly extravagant display, she insisted Vincent lift her onto his shoulders so she could see the top of a giant, glowing reindeer. He did so, steadying her small legs, feeling her hands grip his hair for balance. This is the best day ever, Emma declared happily from her high perch. Rebecca took a photo on her phone, perfectly capturing the moment. Vincent, proud and smiling, holding his daughter up toward the glittering lights. When Vincent caught her eye, she was crying again, but smiling radiantly, happy tears. They stopped for hot chocolate at a street vendor. Emma instantly got a generous dollop of whipped cream on her nose. Emma's enthusiasm, powered by a sticky, joyful exuberance, achieved its desired effect, making Vincent laugh a deep, genuine sound that resonated in his chest. He reached for a napkin, wiping the evidence of the sugary treat from her cheek with a tenderness that surprised Rebecca. Emma, seeing the joy in his eyes, erupted in a fresh wave of giggles and promptly smeared another smudge of frosting onto his pristine shirt sleeve. Oh, she is definitely testing the limits, Rebecca observed, an amused spark dancing in her eyes as she watched the interaction. Seeing exactly how much she can get away with. Vincent didn't even flinch at the stain. He just shook his head, a warmth blooming in his chest. She can get away with everything, he confessed, his voice heavy with adoration. I'm utterly, completely wrapped around that tiny finger already. Rebecca smiled, leaning her head briefly against his shoulder. Welcome to the club. That makes two of us. The late afternoon sun surrendered completely to the twilight, and the city park transformed into a haven of twinkling string lights, casting a soft, golden glow over the scene. Emma, whose earlier energy had seemed boundless, finally began to flag. Her steps grew sluggish, and she stopped darting ahead, preferring instead to walk securely between the two adults. Vincent immediately sensed the shift. Without a word or seeking permission, he bent down and gently scooped her small, tired body into his arms. She sighed contentedly, instantly settling against the familiar strength of his chest, tucking her head precisely into the curve of his shoulder. I like you, Emma mumbled sleepily, her voice barely a breath. You're nice. Vincent's throat tightened, choked with a powerful, unfamiliar emotion. I like you too, sweet girl, he managed, his voice sounding thick and raw. Very much. The subsequent subway ride home was a study in quiet intimacy. Emma remained deeply asleep in Vincent's secure hold. Rebecca naturally shifted, leaning her weight against his other side, her head resting comfortably near his shoulder. In that moment, Packed together on the humming subway car, it felt terrifyingly right. A portrait of domestic bliss, instantly perfect, yet profoundly unsettling. Vincent Russo had painstakingly constructed his empire on pillars of absolute control, cold calculation, and undeniable power. Yet, this visceral, sudden feeling of being deeply and irrevocably responsible for these two precious people was simultaneously the most unnerving and the single most meaningful experience he had ever undertaken. It shattered the careful walls he had erected around his heart. Once they reached the apartment, the transition to bedtime was seamless. Vincent gently laid Emma into her small bed, while Rebecca quickly and quietly changed her into her dinosaur-themed pajamas. Emma was so utterly exhausted from the excitement of the day that she barely registered the movements, sighing deep into her pillow. They retreated from the room, pulling the door softly closed to preserve the silence. In the living room, Rebecca practically melted onto the sofa, letting out a long, weary groan. "I am depleted," she announced, pushing the hair off her face. "Where does a 3-year-old hide that level of sustained energy?" Vincent settled beside her, positioning himself closer than necessary, allowing their shoulders and knees to touch. "She is incredible," he murmured, his gaze soft. "You've done an astonishing job raising her, Rebecca." "I had help," she admitted, slightly deflecting the intense praise. "My mom steps in often, and my best friend Sarah is a lifesaver. Takes a village, truly." Vincent absorbed this information, his jaw setting with purpose. "I want to meet them," he stated. "Your mother, your friends, everyone who is important to you. I want to know the people who kept you going." Rebecca turned to him fully on the couch, the moment for avoidance finally over. "Vincent," she began, her tone serious, "we absolutely need to have an honest discussion about what this is, about what we are doing here." His response was immediate, cutting through her hesitation. "I know exactly what I want," he affirmed, his eyes locking onto hers. "I want you. I want Emma. I want to build a life where we are a family." "It's not that simple," Rebecca countered, though the sharpness was missing from her soft voice. 4 years is a huge span, Vincent. We missed so much life, and we've both fundamentally changed." "Have we?" Vincent countered gently, taking her hand and beginning to trace slow, hypnotic circles on her palm with his thumb. "Because whenever I'm near you, I feel like the man I was before. The man who loved you so profoundly he couldn't see straight. The only difference is now I'm better, stronger, more stable, and finally capable of providing what you truly need." "What I need?" Rebecca echoed, her voice barely a whisper, a flicker of hope and pain crossing her face. "Do you honestly know what I need? Tell me?" Vincent urged, leaning in, his gaze intense. "Just tell me, Rebecca, and I will give it to you. Anything you ask." Rebecca's breath hitched painfully in her chest. "I need a guarantee that you won't leave again," she managed, tears welling. "That when things inevitably become difficult, you will stay and fight for us. I can manage a lot of hardship, Vincent. I've proven that over the last 4 years. But I cannot, absolutely cannot, handle you shattering Emma's heart. Or mine. Not ever again." Vincent immediately cupped her face with both of his large hands, holding her gaze captive, forcing her to see the truth in his eyes. "I swear to you on everything I own, on my very life," he stated, his voice ringing with absolute finality. "I am not going anywhere. You and Emma are my singular priority now. Nothing else holds any importance." He clarified his concrete steps. "My empire can be run by competent managers. I've already begun the process of delegating the dangerous parts, the questionable deals, the things that kept me away. I am pulling out of all of it. I have more than enough capital to sustain us for several lifetimes. What I desperately lack is time. Time with my daughter, time with you, and I am not wasting another precious second." Rebecca's eyes meticulously searched every contour of his face, seeking the smallest shadow of doubt or deception. Whatever she discovered there, a profound, undeniable sincerity, satisfied the fear within her. She closed the remaining distance between them, initiating a fierce, demanding kiss. Vincent reacted instantly, his arms winding tightly around her, pulling her onto his lap. This kiss was unlike the tentative, exploring one from the previous night. It was ravenous, demanding. For years of crushing separation, agonizing longing, and profound loneliness were violently poured into that single connection. Rebecca's hands fisted desperately in the fabric of his shirt, dragging him even closer. Vincent let out a low groan, his carefully maintained control dissolving. He had forgotten the specific, intoxicating taste of her, the absolute perfection of her body molded against his. How every touch immediately set his entire nervous system alight. They finally broke apart, both gasping for air, their hearts hammering. Rebecca's lips were swollen and rosy, and her eyes shimmered brilliantly with raw emotion. "Emma's asleep," she whispered, unnecessarily stating the obvious. Vincent gently framed her face again. "Rebecca, we don't have to rush this. Not a thing. I am not going anywhere." "I know that," she replied softly, tracing his jawline. "But I have waited 4 years, Vincent. I don't want to wait even one more night." She met his eyes, her voice clear. "Stay with me tonight." Vincent kissed her forehead tenderly, then moved to her lips, pouring every ounce of his resolve and love into the connection. "Always," he vowed. They moved into the bedroom, closing the door softly behind them, insulating themselves from the world. For a long moment, Vincent simply held Rebecca, their foreheads pressed together, sinking their breath. For years of agonizing separation, of buried longing, of the ache of missing one another, it all seemed to melt away into the profound, quiet comfort of finally being reunited. "I've missed this feeling," Rebecca whispered into the darkness. "Missed you. Missed us." "Never again," Vincent promised, his voice raw with finality. "I am never leaving you again." They settled onto the bed together, fully enveloped in each other's embrace. Vincent held her securely, his fingers gently stroking her hair, placing protective, tender kisses on her temple. She rested her head over his heart, listening to the steady, strong rhythm, her hand instinctively lying over the spot where his heart beat. For hours, they remained that way, speaking in low whispers about the paths their lives had taken apart, discussing Emma, sharing their fragile, nascent dreams for a shared future. Vincent confided in her about the sterile, lonely nights when thoughts of her were his only solace. Rebecca shared how she used to gaze at Emma and see undeniable traces of him in every single expression. They laughed softly at the memories, they cried together over the wasted time, and mostly, they just held each other, rebuilding a connection word by word, touch by touch. Eventually, a profound, emotional exhaustion claimed them. Rebecca slipped into a deep sleep first, sheltered and safe in Vincent's arms. He stayed awake for a significant time longer, watching the peaceful contours of her face illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the window, still struck by a sense of disbelief that she was truly granting him this impossible second chance. When the morning light finally arrived, they were lying together, still fully clothed, but utterly tangled and closer than they had been in 4 long years. Rebecca was idly tracing abstract patterns on Vincent's chest, her head settled comfortably above his thrumming heart. He played gently with strands of her hair, perfectly content just to hold her. "I love you," Vincent spoke into the quiet, simple and profound. "I never once stopped." "I love you, too," Rebecca whispered back, the admission heavy with relief. "God, I tried not to. It would have made everything so much easier, but I couldn't turn it off." Vincent kissed the crown of her head. "So what is our next step? What do we tell Emma?" "The truth," Rebecca decided firmly, "that you are her father, that we love each other, and that we are going to genuinely try to be a real family." She paused, raising her gaze to his. "That is what you want, right? To really try?" "More than anything," Vincent confirmed immediately. "I want to marry you, Rebecca. I want Emma to officially have my last name. I want us to be legitimate." Rebecca pulled back, visibly surprised by the declaration. "Vincent, that is moving incredibly fast. We already have a 3-year-old together, Vincent countered wryly, a corner of his mouth curving up. I think we skipped the moving slowly phase entirely. Rebecca's laughter erupted, loud and unrestrained, filling the intimate space of the room. Fair point, she conceded, shaking her head. They lay there in a comfortable silence, soaking in the peace. Then Rebecca's stomach let out a thunderous growl, startling them both into laughter. Oh my God! She realized, covering her abdomen. We never ate dinner last night. I'll order food immediately, Vincent said, reaching for his phone. What are you craving? Chinese, she declared without hesitation. From Golden Dragon. They know my regular order. Vincent called and placed an enormous order. Enough food for 3 extremely hungry people, making sure to include an extra carton of egg rolls because Rebecca casually mentioned they were Emma's absolute favorite. While waiting, they quickly dressed and moved back into the living room. Rebecca checked on Emma, who remained sound asleep, then rejoined Vincent on the couch. He immediately pulled her into his embrace, and she settled against him with a startling naturalness, as if 4 years had been merely a long weekend. Now, practically speaking, what happens next? Rebecca asked, her voice turning analytical. You have your entire life, your businesses. I have my job and Emma's preschool routine. How do we actually make this logistics puzzle work? We figure it out together, Vincent said simply. Perhaps I secure a place closer to your apartment. Or maybe, eventually, you both move in with me. Whatever option makes the most sense. Whatever keeps us together. Emma adores her preschool, Rebecca pointed out. And I can't just abandon my job. I would never ask you to, Vincent assured her gently. We will approach this slowly. Well, slower, he amended with a slight smile. Let Emma fully adjust to me being a constant presence. Let us readjust to the weight of being a couple again. Then we tackle the bigger life decisions. Rebecca nodded, the pragmatic answer easing her anxiety. The delivery arrived, and they ate ravenously straight from the cardboard containers, engaging in the kind of meandering conversation that covers everything and nothing important. Vincent absorbed new details about her current life, that Rebecca had discovered a quiet passion for painting abstract landscapes, that her deep, abiding hatred of mornings remained unchanged, and that she indulged in watching terrible, brainless reality TV shows once Emma was asleep because they required zero cognitive effort. Rebecca, in turn, learned about the lonely structure of his life, that he had started working out obsessively, transforming his body as a coping mechanism for stress, that he had attempted dating in the past, but found every interaction hollow because no one measured up to her. Most heartbreakingly, he revealed that he had kept every single photo of them, from their brief, intense romance, stored in a heavy, locked box he only allowed himself to open during moments of crippling loneliness. We wasted so much irreplaceable time, Rebecca murmured sadly, looking down at the discarded containers. Then we won't waste another single moment, Vincent declared firmly, capturing her gaze. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, navy velvet box. I bought this 2 days ago, the day after I first saw you again. Rebecca's eyes widened, recognizing the significance of the object. Vincent? It's not an engagement ring, he clarified quickly. Well, structurally it is, but I'm not proposing right now. Not yet. I respect that we need time to heal and reconnect. He flipped the box open, revealing a delicate, brilliant diamond ring nestled inside. This is a tangible promise, Rebecca. A covenant that I am here, that I am irrevocably committed, and that when you are ready, when we are both ready, I am going to ask you properly. He held her gaze. And I need you to say yes. Rebecca's hands trembled visibly as she accepted the box, gazing at the beautiful stone. It's magnificent. You don't have to wear it, Vincent said softly. Not if it feels like too much pressure. I just wanted you to have it, to truly understand the seriousness of my intentions. Rebecca looked at the ring, then up at the unwavering intensity in Vincent's eyes, then back at the sparkling diamond. Slowly, she took the ring out of the box and carefully slid it onto the ring finger of her right hand. I'll wear it, she declared, a tear tracking down her cheek. As a promise that I'm serious, too. Vincent closed the distance, initiating a slow, profound kiss, pouring every feeling of hope and devotion into the contact. When they separated, Rebecca was smiling brilliantly through her tears. "We're really doing this," she whispered, still amazed. "We're really giving ourselves a second chance." "We're not just giving ourselves a second chance," Vincent corrected, his voice firm. "We're building something entirely new, something fundamentally better, something that integrates Emma and everything we learned from our failure." A tiny, sleepy voice cut through the emotional atmosphere. "I'm hungry." They sprang apart slightly, turning to see Emma standing in the hallway entrance, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her hair sticking out wildly in every direction. She surveyed their position on the couch, close together, slightly disheveled, and offered a knowing, innocent smile. "Were you two kissing?" she asked, not accusatory, but merely curious. "Yes, we were," Rebecca admitted readily, deciding simple honesty was the best path forward. "Good," Emma declared with the authority of a world leader. "That means Vincent can stay forever, right?" Vincent laughed, a sound full of unexpected joy, and pulled Emma onto his lap without hesitation. "Would you like that very much, sweetheart, if I stayed?" Emma nodded so vigorously her head wobbled. "Yes, then we can be a real family, like the one in my dollhouse." Vincent looked past Emma's messy curls to meet Rebecca's eyes. She was crying again, but smiling with such blinding happiness that it literally snatched his breath away. "Then I'll stay," Vincent promised, hugging Emma tightly to his chest. "Forever." Emma cheered triumphantly. In that moment, Vincent felt a deep, profound sense of rightness settle into the core of his being. This was it. This was what he had been subconsciously searching for his entire adult life. Not immense power or endless money or forced respect. Just this unconditional love, a family, and the grace of a second chance. Whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together. The following 2 weeks melted into a blur of unexpected, effortless happiness. A state Vincent had never believed possible. He dedicated every single available moment to Rebecca and Emma, diligently absorbing the rhythms of their domestic life and quietly integrating himself into their daily routines. He learned small, crucial details. That Emma fiercely resisted having her fine hair brushed and employed sophisticated negotiation tactics every single morning to avoid it. That she adamantly insisted on wearing mismatched socks because, in her view, matching socks were utterly tedious. And that while she was terrified of the imaginary monsters lurking under her bed, she approached all real-life challenges with surprising bravery. Vincent started arranging to pick Emma up from her preschool 3 afternoons a week. The first time he arrived, the impact was visceral. Emma spotted him across the playground and ran toward him, shouting "Daddy!" at the top of her small lungs. Vincent felt his knees nearly buckle from the sheer emotional force of that single word. The other watchful parents paused their conversations to stare, and Emma's patient teacher, Miss Caroline, looked genuinely baffled. But Emma was so radiatingly proud to introduce him that Vincent realized he didn't care about the scrutiny. "This is my daddy," Emma declared to every single person within earshot. He was far, far away, but now he's back forever. Forever. Vincent intended to fulfill that promise until his last breath. He mastered the art of making Emma's favorite breakfast. Perfect, fluffy chocolate chip pancakes meticulously shaped like Mickey Mouse ears. He memorized her preferred bedtime stories and the specific ones that made her pull the covers over her head. He learned she loved to belt out songs during bath time and that sleep was impossible without her threadbare, one-antlered stuffed reindeer, Rudolph. Rebecca observed these intimate exchanges with a mixture of happy tears and proud smiles, documenting every milestone on her phone. One evening, Vincent caught her watching a video he didn't know existed. A clip of him and Emma playing a hilariously clumsy game of hide-and-seek, laughing as Emma's terrible hiding skills were captured on camera. "What is it?" Vincent asked, wrapping his strong arms around her from behind. "You're just a natural," Rebecca murmured, resting her head back against his shoulder. "I honestly worried you might struggle with the dad stuff, given your background," but you just fell right into it. I'm making up for lost time, Vincent confessed, placing a kiss on the sensitive skin of her neck. I refuse to miss anything else. Their own dynamic relationship deepened rapidly as well. Vincent stayed over nearly every night, sometimes leaving before dawn to handle essential business matters, but always returning quietly before Emma's alarm went off. He and Rebecca instantly slipped back into their comfortable, unspoken rhythms, finishing each other's sentences, conveying volumes with a simple look across the room, occupying that unique, comfortable space reserved for couples who truly know one another's soul. The physical chemistry was more volcanic than before. They snatched stolen moments whenever Emma was engrossed in play or safely asleep, enthusiastically rediscovering each other and forging powerful new memories. Vincent found himself constantly amazed. Rebecca made him feel utterly and completely alive, like every nerve ending in his body was specifically tuned to her frequency. 2 weeks after the quiet joy of Christmas, Vincent's cell phone abruptly rang during their chaotic, happy breakfast. He glanced down at the screen, and his face instantly clouded over, the easy warmth vanishing. Rebecca noticed the change immediately. What is it? What's wrong? It's Marco, Vincent replied, his voice already tight. Marco Vitelli was his trusted second-in-command, a man he relied on implicitly in the old world. I need to take this. He excused himself, walking quickly into the bedroom and firmly shutting the door behind him. What is it? He asked, keeping his voice low. We have a serious problem, boss, Marco reported without preamble. Dominic Castigliano is demanding a meeting, says it's non-negotiable and urgent. Vincent's jaw clenched hard. Dominic Castigliano represented the absolute worst part of his history, the kind of shadowy business Vincent was desperately trying to jettison. Tell him I'm unavailable. Permanently. He's insisting, boss. He made a point of saying if you don't meet with him, he will find you himself. Vincent's blood ran instantly cold. The threat was thinly veiled but potent. Is that what I think it is? It sounded like a direct threat to me, Marco confirmed grimly. Vincent closed his eyes, forcing himself to think past the surge of adrenaline. He had always known that walking away from certain deep commitments wouldn't be simple. Men like Castigliano didn't simply accept a resignation. All right, set up a meeting for tomorrow. Pick a neutral, highly public location. And Marco, Vincent added, his tone lethal, I want this to be the last one we ever have with him. Make that unequivocally clear. When Vincent returned to the kitchen, both Rebecca and Emma were staring at him, their faces etched with concern. Emma's expression was simple confusion, but Rebecca's was sharp and knowing. She recognized that hardened, focused look, the one that meant real trouble from 4 years ago. Vincent, she asked quietly, her hand reaching out for him. It's fine, he asserted, instantly manufacturing a warm smile for Emma's benefit. Just a little work situation. Rebecca was not, however, convinced. After Vincent dropped Emma off at preschool later that morning, Rebecca was waiting when he returned, standing in the middle of the living room with her arms tightly crossed. Talk to me, she demanded. What is genuinely going on? Vincent sighed heavily, running a frustrated hand through his meticulously styled hair. It's just someone from my past who insists on a meeting. It's nothing dangerous. It's just business I need to finalize and shut down. What specific kind of business? Rebecca pressed, her eyes refusing to leave his. Vincent selected his words with excruciating care. The kind I told you I was permanently getting out of. I've been systematically transitioning all operations toward legitimate ventures. But there are certain people who are not happy about my decision to step away. They feel abandoned. Rebecca's expression tightened with raw worry. Is there danger involved? Are you in danger? No. Vincent insisted firmly, pulling her into a fierce embrace. I promise you I can handle this one meeting. I go in, I make it definitively clear that I am finished. That's the end. What if they simply refuse to accept that? Rebecca asked, her voice barely audible. They will, Vincent asserted, injecting more confidence into his tone than he truly felt. Because I am going to make them understand that I have far more important priorities now. You and Emma are my entire life. Nothing else holds any weight. Rebecca hugged him back tightly, burying her face in his suit jacket. I am so scared. Don't be, Vincent whispered into her hair, kissing her temple. I am not going to let anything happen to us. You have to trust me on this. The high-stakes meeting was slated for that very evening. Vincent dressed carefully in one of his custom-tailored, intimidatingly expensive suits, the dark, pristine fabric feeling like the necessary armor he wore when entering the cutthroat world of his old business. Rebecca stood nearby, silently watching him prepare, her anxiety thick and palpable in the air. Come back to me, she said, the plea undeniable as he reached the door. Always, Vincent promised, pulling her in for a long, deep, reassuring kiss. I love you. The agreed-upon meeting location was a sleek, upscale Italian restaurant owned by Castaniano, shuttered specifically for this private conversation. Vincent arrived to find Dominic Castaniano already settled at a table in the center, a heavy glass of amber whiskey reflecting the muted light. Dominic was in his early 50s, his gray hair sharply slicked back, dressed in an impeccably expensive suit. His eyes, however, were cold and utterly flat. He offered Vincent a wide smile that failed entirely to reach them. Vincent Russo, Castaniano greeted, gesturing to the seat opposite. It's been a while, Dominic, Vincent acknowledged, pulling out the chair. What exactly is so urgent? Straight to business. I've always appreciated that efficiency in you, Castaniano drawled, taking a slow sip of his drink. The word circulating is that you are unilaterally pulling out of our arrangement, abandoning extremely profitable ventures. That's correct, Vincent confirmed, resting his hands lightly on the table. I am focusing exclusively on legitimate business now. My old operations are being seamlessly transferred to highly capable people. Capability is irrelevant, Castaniano snapped, his voice hardening instantly. Loyalty is. We had long-term agreements, Vincent. Extensive plans. You don't simply walk away from arrangements like those. I am walking away, Vincent countered firmly, meeting the older man's intense stare without blinking. My circumstances have drastically changed. I have a family now, a daughter. I am finished with this life. Castaniano let out a dry, humorless laugh. A daughter? That's your justification, Vincent? We all have families. That is not an acceptable excuse to abandon your responsibilities. They are not responsibilities I desire any longer, Vincent stated simply. I have made my final decision, Dominic. Respect it. Castaniano leaned forward suddenly, his expression turning dangerous, predatory. And if I choose not to, what then? You believe you can just cut ties and expect everything to stay smooth? This world does not operate that way. Vincent felt a familiar surge of old temper but kept it tightly controlled. I am not asking for permission. I am informing you as a professional courtesy. I am out. My people will ensure the transition is clean. But I am done. Castaniano studied him for a prolonged, chilling moment. You've gone soft, Russo. That woman and that kid have made you weak. They've made me strong, Vincent corrected, his voice resonating with conviction. Strong enough to walk away from this, and strong enough to choose something exponentially better. There is nothing better than power and money, Castaniano spat derisively. You are profoundly wrong, Vincent said, pushing his chair back and rising to his feet. There is love. There is family. There is waking up every morning knowing you are building something that actually matters. He planted both hands on the table, leaning back down to confront Castaniano eye to eye. I have found what matters, Dominic, and I am not sacrificing it for anything. Not for you. Not for anyone. Castaniano's face contorted into an ugly mask of rage. You are making a catastrophic mistake, Russo. No, Vincent replied, turning away. I am fixing one. He walked out of the silent restaurant without a backward glance, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The confrontation could certainly have ended worse, but it had also not been conclusive. Castigliano was not a man who accepted defeat, much less abandonment, gracefully. Vincent knew he would have to remain meticulously careful until he was completely disentangled from that entire toxic world. When Vincent finally arrived back at the apartment, he found Rebecca pacing a deep, anxious groove in the living room rug. The instant she saw him, she launched herself across the space and into his arms. "You're okay?" she breathed, clutching his expensive suit jacket. "I was so worried." "I'm fine," Vincent assured her, crushing her in a protective embrace. "It's over. I made my position entirely clear." "And they accepted it?" Vincent hesitated just slightly. "Not exactly, but they will. I just need to exercise patience." Rebecca immediately pulled back, her eyes searching his for the truth he was attempting to shield her from. "Vincent, if there is danger—" "There isn't," he interrupted forcefully. "I promise you, I will not allow anything to jeopardize our family. I just need to handle this delicate transition carefully. They need time to adjust to my decision." Before Rebecca could articulate her next fear, Emma came barreling out of her room, launching herself joyfully at Vincent. "Daddy, you're home." Vincent caught her midair, swinging her up. Each time she called him Daddy, the word struck him with the same overwhelming force as the very first time. "Hey, sweetheart, were you good for Mommy?" "So good," Emma declared proudly. "We made cookies. Want one?" "I would absolutely love one," Vincent said, carrying her into the kitchen where a plate of slightly lopsided, lovingly misshapen cookies awaited. He ate 3 while Emma recounted elaborate, dramatic stories about the entire baking process. Much later, after Emma was finally asleep, Vincent and Rebecca lay side by side in bed. Rebecca was silently tracing the cool contours of the promise ring on her right hand, deep in thought. "What is it?" Vincent asked softly. "I want you to meet my mother," Rebecca announced. "And my friends. I want them to know you are officially back in my life and most importantly in Emma's life." Vincent smiled, relief washing over him. "I want that more than you know. She's going to bombard you with a million questions," Rebecca warned, preemptively. "My mother is ferociously protective. She was there for every moment. The pregnancy, the birth, all the sleepless nights. She is going to require absolute clarity on your intentions." "My intentions are simple," Vincent said, pulling her close. "To marry you, and to be a consistent, loving father to Emma. She can ask whatever she wants, Rebecca. I have absolutely nothing left to hide from her, or from you." Vincent reaffirmed the promise, the weight of his past feeling lighter in the presence of her trust. Rebecca leaned in and kissed him, a soft press of lips that spoke volumes of forgiveness and rediscovered passion. "I love you," she whispered against his mouth. "I love you, too," Vincent replied, pulling her into the curve of his body. "And Rebecca, thank you." "Thank you for what?" he prompted. "For giving me another chance to be the man I should have been. For raising Emma to be so incredible, so full of light. For being the rock, for not giving up on us, even when I was foolish enough to have given up on myself." He framed her face with his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away the hint of moisture around her eyes. "You are genuinely the strongest person I know, Rebecca." Her eyes, glistening with tears of gratitude and hope, met his. "We are going to make this work, Vincent. All of it. You, me, Emma, we are going to be happy, truly happy." "We already are," Vincent murmured, pulling her in so close he could feel the beat of her heart against his chest. "This isn't an ending. This is just the beginning of everything." As they finally drifted into sleep, their limbs tangled together beneath the soft sheets, a profound certainty settled over Vincent. It was a cold, absolute conviction that superseded any business deal or legal contract. Whatever obstacles came their way, financial trouble, personal demons, or challenges from his past that inevitably tried to intrude, he would stand against them. He would handle them all, because nothing in this world was more essential, more priceless, than the 2 people sleeping safely beside him in this little apartment. The reality of meeting Rebecca's mother, Patricia Hayes, proved to be more terrifying and high-pressure than any billion-dollar business negotiation Vincent had ever conducted in a boardroom. He stood outside a solid, historic brownstone in Queens, the kind of home that spoke of generations of enduring pride. He clutched a substantial bouquet of lilies and a meticulously chosen bottle of expensive Cabernet, feeling utterly reduced, like a teenager picking up his first date. "She's going to love you, Vince," Rebecca lied cheerfully, squeezing his hand to impart some semblance of courage. Emma bounced excitedly between them, completely oblivious to the sheer magnitude of Vincent's anxiety. "Grandma makes the best lasagna in the whole world," Emma announced, her voice piping high with glee. "And she gives the best hugs. And she lets me stay up late." The front door swung open before they could even lift a hand to knock, suggesting Patricia had been waiting, possibly peering through the lace curtains. Patricia Hayes was a statuesque woman in her late 50s, possessing the exact same sharp, emerald green eyes as Rebecca, framed by neat silver hair pulled back into an impeccable bun. Her gaze was clinical, sweeping over Vincent from his polished shoes to his nervous smile with an expression that felt like cold steel. "So," she said, her voice dry and without preamble, "you're the one who broke my daughter's heart." "Mom," Rebecca immediately protested, stepping forward. "It's okay, Rebecca," Vincent interrupted, his voice steady despite the hammering in his chest. He stepped forward, meeting Patricia's severe stare directly. "Mrs. Hayes, you're absolutely right. I did break her heart, and it was the worst mistake of my life. I've spent every day since then trying to prove that I will never, ever do it again. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway." Patricia studied him for another prolonged, excruciating moment. Vincent waited, refusing to flinch. Finally, the icy rigor around her mouth softened infinitesimally. "Well," she conceded, a hint of grudging respect in her voice, "at least you're honest. Come in before the food gets cold." Emma darted inside immediately, familiar with the geography of the house. Vincent and Rebecca followed more cautiously, entering a space that was immediately warm and inviting, permeated by the incredible, rich aroma of Italian cooking. The walls were filled with framed family photos, a testament to the stability Vincent had always craved but never possessed. Over a lavish dinner, the lasagna was, indeed, magnificent. Patricia initiated a thorough, professional interrogation. She asked about everything. Where did he live? What exactly did he do for work? How much money did he make? And most importantly, what were his long-term intentions toward her daughter and granddaughter? Vincent answered every question truthfully, not attempting to sanitize or embellish his answers. "I own several businesses," he explained, setting down his fork. "Real estate holdings, import operations, investments. I won't lie, Mrs. Hayes. A lot of that world was gray. But I am currently in the process of completely restructuring everything to focus only on legitimate ventures. I want to build something real, something solid. I want to be someone Emma can always be proud of." "And Rebecca?" Patricia asked pointedly, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What about her?" Vincent turned his gaze toward Rebecca, who was watching him with tender, hopeful eyes. "I want to marry her," he stated, the words clear and certain. "I want us to be a proper, legally recognized family. I know we're doing things backward, starting with a daughter and then a house, but I love your daughter, Mrs. Hayes. I always have, even when I thought I had to walk away." Patricia's stern expression finally cracked, breaking into a genuine, warm smile that illuminated her face. "Call me Patricia," she instructed. She leaned back slightly. "And you should know, young man, I would have come looking for you years ago with a rolling pin if Rebecca hadn't made me promise to stay out of it. I've been waiting a long time to give you a piece of my mind." "You can give me several pieces," Vincent assured her, a genuine smile replacing his nervousness. "I deserve it." Emma, suddenly defeated by the warmth and the heavy meal, climbed onto Patricia's lap, yawning despite her earlier claims of boundless energy. "Grandma, tell Vincent the story about when Mommy was little and got stuck in the tree." "Oh, Emma, not that story," Rebecca groaned, burying her face in her hands, though she was smiling. The remainder of the evening passed quickly, filled with laughter and domestic ease. Patricia delighted in showing Vincent embarrassing childhood photos of Rebecca, much to Rebecca's mortification and Emma's amusement. Eventually, Emma fell deeply asleep right there on the couch, and Vincent carried her gently to the small guest room where she kept some clothes, tucking her into bed with infinite care. When he returned to the kitchen, Patricia was alone, efficiently washing dishes. Vincent immediately joined her, taking up a dish towel and drying without being asked. "She cried for months after you left," Patricia said quietly, her voice low and tight as she scrubbed a plate. Then, when she found out she was pregnant, she cried even more. She felt so alone. But she was also fierce and determined. "My girl has always been strong. She is the strongest person I know." Vincent agreed, his own throat tightening with shame and affection. "Emma asks about you sometimes," Patricia continued, her eyes focused on the sink. "She sees other kids with fathers and wonders why hers isn't around. Rebecca always tells her that her daddy loves her but lives far away, traveling for work. But I see how much it hurts her to say it, how the lie cuts her every time." Vincent felt a burning shame, the tightness in his throat growing into a knot. "I'm here now," he vowed, his voice husky. "I'm not going anywhere, ever again." Patricia stopped washing and turned to face him fully, her green eyes once again piercingly serious. "You better not," she warned, the threat utterly sincere. "Because if you hurt my girls again, either of them, I don't care how much money you have or how many businesses you own. I will personally make your life miserable. I will burn your reputation to the ground." Vincent didn't flinch, smiling despite the lethal seriousness of her tone. "I believe you completely, Patricia," he said, "and I promise you that will never happen." Patricia studied him for a final, lingering moment, then nodded sharply, satisfied. "Good. Now, when are you going to make an honest woman of my daughter?" "Soon," Vincent said, meeting her smile with his own genuine look of purpose. "Very soon." 2 days later, the calm of Vincent's newfound domestic happiness was shattered by an urgent call from Marco. "Boss, we need to meet now." Marco's voice cracked over the phone line. Vincent's stomach dropped instantly. The sheer panic and stress in Marco's normally calm demeanor was deeply wrong. He quickly arranged to meet at their usual discreet spot, a small, anonymous coffee shop far from downtown. Marco looked genuinely shaken when Vincent arrived, his sharp suit rumpled and his usual composure entirely missing. "Castiano sent a message," Marco explained, gripping his coffee cup. "He's not backing down from your decision to walk away." "What kind of message?" Vincent asked, though a cold dread was already pooling in his veins. "He knows about Rebecca and Emma," Marco whispered, his voice laced with terror. "He knows where they live. He sent pictures." Vincent's blood didn't just turn to ice. It felt like it stopped circulating entirely. "Is that meant to be a direct threat?" "I think it's meant to clarify the stakes," Marco said carefully, rubbing his temples. "He wants you to reconsider your decision. He said something about how family men need to think carefully about their choices." Vincent's hands clenched into bone-white fists under the table. "That son of a—" "Easy, boss," Marco warned. "Losing your temper won't help. We need a plan. Now." Vincent forced himself to inhale a long, steadying breath. "I need security on Rebecca's apartment. Immediately. The absolute best surveillance and protection we have." "Already arranged," Marco confirmed, nodding quickly. "I figured you'd want that. But Vincent, this could get messy. Castiano is not someone who deals in empty threats. He wants you back under his thumb." "Then I'll make him understand this one is real," Vincent said, his voice dropping to a low, lethal pitch. "Set up another meeting tonight. Private. And Marco, listen to me. I'm ending this. Whatever it takes to ensure their safety, I will do it." Vincent drove straight to Rebecca's apartment, his mind a whirlwind of fear and fierce determination. He knew he had to tell her about the danger, but he dreaded causing her panic. Above all, he needed to implement his plan and ensure Emma and Rebecca were protected. Rebecca was home from work, sitting on the living room floor, building an elaborate castle out of wooden blocks with Emma. She smiled when she saw him, but the smile immediately faltered and faded as she registered the rigid tension in his posture and the coldness in his eyes. "Emma, sweetie, why don't you go play in your room for a bit?" Rebecca asked gently, standing up immediately. "But we're playing house," Emma protested, looking up from her tower. "I know, baby. Just for a few minutes," Rebecca said, already moving toward Vincent. "Mommy needs to talk to Vincent about work." Emma pouted dramatically but obeyed, skipping off to her room. The instant the door clicked shut, Rebecca grabbed Vincent's arm, her fingers digging in. "What happened? You look like you just walked out of a war zone." Vincent explained the situation as calmly and concisely as possible, watching Rebecca's face turn stark white. "I've already arranged security," he emphasized. "The best team. There are people watching the building right now, fully armed and ready. You and Emma are safe." "Safe?" Rebecca's voice rose, edged with hysteria. "Vincent, someone is threatening my daughter. My home. My life." "Our daughter," Vincent corrected gently, holding her hands tightly. "And I'm handling it. I'm meeting with Castiano tonight. I'm making this stop permanently." "How?" Rebecca demanded, tears flooding her eyes. "How are you going to make this stop? These people don't just let you walk away with a polite handshake. They will when they understand I'm serious," Vincent promised, pulling her against his chest. "Rebecca, I need you to trust me now more than ever. I will fix this." Rebecca began to cry openly, her body shaking. "I knew this would happen," she choked out. "I knew your old life would come back eventually to hurt us. I told myself it wouldn't, but I knew it. It won't," Vincent insisted firmly, holding her tighter despite her initial resistance. "I swear to you, on my life and everything I care about, I will protect you both. Whatever it takes, I am ending this tonight." Rebecca finally sagged into his embrace, weeping against the fabric of his jacket. "I'm so scared, Vince." "I know," Vincent whispered, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "But you don't need to be. I've got this and I've got you." The meeting that night was fraught with danger and cold intensity from the very first minute. Castiano was seated at a large, round table in a windowless room, flanked by two hulking men who radiated violence. A classic power play designed to intimidate. Vincent, however, had come alone, refusing to show even a flicker of fear. "Did you get my message, Russo?" Castiano asked, leaning forward with a smug, oily smile. "I got it," Vincent replied, his voice dangerously calm, utterly devoid of emotion. "And now I'm delivering mine. You stay away from my family, Castiano. You touch them, you threaten them, you even think about them, and there will be consequences you absolutely do not want to face." Castiano threw his head back and laughed, a loud, artificial sound. "Is that supposed to scare me, Vinny? You think threats work on me?" "It should," Vincent said simply. He pulled out his phone and laid it flat on the table, sliding it toward Castiano. On the screen was a detailed, scrollable document. "This is everything I know about your operations. Names, locations, financial records, political connections, money laundering schemes, everything. I've been documenting it for years as insurance, a kind of retirement fund." Castiano's smile dissolved instantly, replaced by a mask of horrified realization. "What are you doing right now?" he demanded, his voice suddenly sharp. "This information is currently sitting with 3 different legal teams," Vincent explained, maintaining his frigid tone. "They have very specific instructions to release the entirety of the data to federal authorities, the FBI, the marshals, and state prosecutors, if anything happens to me or my family. Anything at all, Dominic. A car accident, a robbery, a random act of violence, a sudden illness. Anything. And Dominic, we both know there is enough here to put you away for life without question." Castiano's face flushed a deep, alarming red with mounting anger. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk that kind of fire." "Try me," Vincent challenged, leaning forward until their faces were inches apart. His eyes were cold, unforgiving. Go ahead, make a move against Rebecca or Emma. See what happens. Because I promise you, I have nothing left to lose in that old world, and I have everything to protect in this new one. You want to know what that makes me, Dominic? Vincent paused, letting the silence hang heavy. Dangerous. The tense silence stretched, punctuated only by the shallow breathing of Castiano's men, who were shifting uncomfortably, sensing the irreversible shift in power dynamics. Finally, Castiano leaned back in his chair, a grim look on his face. "You've changed, Russo," Castiano muttered, shaking his head slightly. The old Vinny would never have played this kind of card. "The old me didn't have a daughter," Vincent replied, his gaze unwavering. "The old me didn't know what really mattered. But I do now. So here's how this is going to work. You leave me and my family completely alone. I leave you alone. We go our separate ways. I don't release the information, and you don't give me a single reason to. Everyone wins." Castiano considered the ultimatum for a long, agonizing moment, his jaw working as he weighed the threat. Finally, he nodded slowly, reluctantly. "Fine. You're out. But, Russo, if you ever—" "I won't," Vincent interrupted smoothly. "As long as you keep your end of the deal, you'll never hear from me again. We're done." Vincent walked out of the meeting feeling an immense weight lift off his shoulders, a burden he hadn't realized he'd been carrying for years. It was not a perfect solution. Life with Castiano meant always looking over his shoulder. But it was enough. Castiano would never risk exposure, and Vincent had made his position absolutely clear. His family was inviolable. When he returned to Rebecca's apartment, she was waiting anxiously by the door. The moment he walked in, she rushed toward him, her face strained with worry. "It's over," Vincent said immediately, anticipating her question. He agreed. "It's done." Rebecca sagged against him with palpable relief. "Really? Just like that? How?" "I had leverage," Vincent explained, holding her close, stroking her hair. "Information he desperately doesn't want public. I made it absolutely clear that threatening my family would mean his total destruction. He's smart enough to back down." Rebecca clung to him tightly, burying her face in his neck. "I was so scared, Vince. I was terrified for Emma." "I know," Vincent whispered, kissing her hair. "But it's over now. We're safe, all of us. No more threats, no more shadows." Emma suddenly appeared in the hallway, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "Why is Mommy crying?" "Happy tears, baby," Rebecca said quickly, wiping her own face and trying to compose herself. "Just the happiest tears." Emma toddled over and hugged both of them, fitting perfectly into the space between their bodies. Vincent wrapped his arms around both his girls, feeling a profound, peaceful sense of completion. This was what he had fought for, this precise moment of simple, secure domesticity. "I have something I want to show you both," Vincent said suddenly, an excitement he couldn't contain bubbling up. He had been planning this for weeks, waiting for the exact right moment. And now that their safety was secured, the time felt perfect. "Can you both get your coats now?" "Vincent, it's past 9 o'clock, Rebecca questioned, surprised. "Trust me," he said with a wide smile that reached his eyes. They bundled up and followed Vincent to his car. He drove them out of the city hustle and into a quiet neighborhood in Brooklyn. Tree-lined streets lined with gorgeous, stately brownstones. He pulled up in front of one particular house, larger and grander than the others, with a small manicured front yard. "What are we doing here?" Rebecca asked, tilting her head. Vincent reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a heavy set of brass keys. "This is ours," he announced simply. "I closed on it last week." Rebecca's mouth dropped open in stunned disbelief. "You what?" "I bought us a house," Vincent repeated, feeling a thrill of pride and joy. "For bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a big backyard for Emma to play in. It needs some cosmetic work, but I thought we could fix it up together. Make it exactly how we want it, floorboard by floorboard." "Vincent," Rebecca breathed, fresh tears streaming down her face. "This is too much. We can't." "It's not enough," Vincent corrected, stepping closer. You and Emma deserve a real home. Our home. A place where we can truly build our future together. Safely. Emma was already bouncing with excitement, oblivious to the deeper significance of the gift. Can we see inside, please? Please? Vincent unlocked the heavy front door, and they stepped inside. The house was empty, echoing, but undeniably beautiful. Wide plank hardwood floors, soaring high ceilings, and massive windows that let the moonlight flood in. Emma ran through the rooms, her footsteps echoing happily, immediately declaring which room would definitively be hers. Rebecca turned to Vincent, completely overwhelmed, her hands covering her mouth. I truly can't believe you did this. Believe it, Vincent said, taking a step back. He lowered himself onto one knee, pulling the small velvet box he had been carrying for weeks from his inner jacket pocket. And while we're here, in our new home, I have one more thing to ask you. Rebecca's hands flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Emma stopped her explorations, sensing the gravity of the moment, and crept back to watch. Rebecca Hayes. Vincent began, his voice thick with a genuine emotion that made him feel shaky. 4 years ago, I made the single biggest, most agonizing mistake of my life by walking away from you. I will not be making that mistake again. He opened the box, revealing the stunning diamond ring. You are the love of my life, the mother of my child, my best friend, my conscience, my everything. I want to wake up next to you every single morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to watch Emma grow up together as partners. I want to build a life, a real, permanent life with you both starting right here. Will you marry me? Rebecca was sobbing so hard she could barely articulate a word. Yes, she managed, shaking her head vigorously through the tears. Yes, Vincent. Yes, yes, yes. Vincent slipped the magnificent ring onto her finger, the promise ring he had given her years ago, now serving its true, intended purpose. He stood and pulled her into a long, powerful kiss, pouring 4 years of regret and rediscovered love into the embrace. Emma cheered rapturously, running circles around them. We're getting married. She sang happily. We're going to be a real family. We already are, Vincent corrected, lifting her up into the hug and kissing her cheek. But now it's official. Standing together in their empty house, the moonlight illuminating the dust motes and the promise of future happiness. Vincent held his 2 girls and knew he had finally found what he had truly been searching for all along. Not power, not success, not the vastness of wealth, just this profound, simple love. Just family. Just home. 3 days later, Vincent and Rebecca sat Emma down for the conversation they had planned with painstaking care. Emma listened with huge, solemn eyes as they explained that Vincent was her biological father, that he hadn't known about her when he left, and that they were all going to be a family now. So, you've always been my daddy? Emma asked, taking a moment to process the monumental information, even when you were far away and just traveling. Always, Vincent confirmed, his voice thick with overwhelming emotion. I just didn't know it yet, sweetheart. But I'm here now, and I'm never leaving again. Emma thought about this very seriously, tilting her head. Then, a huge, radiant smile broke across her face. Good, she announced. 'Cause I really like having a daddy. Can I call you daddy at preschool now? Like for real? Vincent laughed, tears finally stinging his eyes. You can call me daddy anywhere you want, sweetheart. Forever. Emma threw her arms around him in a tight hug. Best news ever. The wedding was planned quickly. Neither Vincent nor Rebecca saw any reason to wait. They chose New Year's Eve, a symbolic way to start their new year as a legally married couple. It would be small and intimate, restricted to immediate family and a handful of close friends. Vincent's boisterous Italian family descended upon them 2 days before the wedding. His mother, Francesca, was a force of nature, a tiny woman who immediately burst into tears upon seeing Emma, instantly declaring her the most beautiful granddaughter in the world. She has the Russo eyes, Vince, Francesca proclaimed, cupping Emma's face reverently. And the Russo spirit, I can tell already. Sophia, Vincent's sister, was equally emotional and loud. She brought her own 2 children, who immediately adopted Emma as their favorite cousin. Within minutes, the three kids were running through the brownstone, laughing and screaming in unified chaos, as if they had known each other forever. "I can't believe you hid her from us for 3 years," Sophia scolded playfully, swatting Vincent's arm. 3 years, Vincent. We could have been spoiling her this whole time. I didn't know about her either, remember? Vincent reminded her, shaking his head. Still, we have so much lost time to make up for. Sophia watched Emma playing with her cousins and smiled, a softness in her eyes. She's perfect, Vince. Absolutely perfect. Rebecca, initially nervous about meeting Vincent's large, loud, and intense family, was quickly and thoroughly embraced. Francesca insisted on cooking dinner for everyone, completely taking over Rebecca's kitchen and filling the new house with the magnificent, comforting smells of homemade pasta and sauce. "You took good care of my granddaughter," Francesca told Rebecca later, tears again welling up. "You raised her alone when you should not have had to. You are a strong woman, Rebecca. Vincent is lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Rebecca insisted, hugging the older woman warmly. The night before the wedding, Vincent stayed at his penthouse while Rebecca and Emma stayed at the house with Sophia and Francesca, a traditional separation. It was the first night they had spent apart in weeks, and Vincent found he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the last month in his head, marveling at how his entire life had been changed and cemented so quickly. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. * can't sleep. Missing you already. Vincent smiled and immediately called her. She answered on the first ring. "Hi," she said softly, sounding drowsy yet thrilled. "Hi," Vincent replied, leaning back against his pillows. "Cold feet." "Never," Rebecca asserted. "Just excited and nervous and incredibly happy. Is it normal to feel everything all at once?" "I think so," Vincent said, staring out at the distant lights of the city. "I feel the same way, like I'm about to start the rest of my life, and I can't wait for it to begin." They talked for over an hour, discussing everything from their hopes for the future to Emma's Christmas wish list, to the specifics of how they would paint the living room. When they finally hung up, Vincent felt utterly peaceful. Tomorrow he was marrying the love of his life. Tomorrow he was officially becoming Emma's father. Tomorrow, everything he had ever truly wanted was finally coming true. The wedding was held the following afternoon in the backyard of their new brownstone, despite the crisp December cold. Vincent had arranged for powerful outdoor heaters and a vast white tent decorated with thousands of shimmering, twinkling lights. A dusting of snow began to fall gently as the guests arrived, creating a magical, hushed atmosphere. Emma served as the flower girl, wearing a miniature white dress adorned with purple silk flowers that matched the elegant bridesmaid gown worn by Sophia. She took her role with focused concentration, walking down the temporary aisle and carefully scattering rose petals. Then Rebecca appeared, and Vincent forgot how to breathe entirely. She wore a simple, beautifully tailored white dress that perfectly hugged her curves. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and she held a small bouquet of delicate winter flowers. She was, quite simply, the most breathtaking thing he had ever seen. Patricia walked her daughter down the aisle, crying openly and unabashedly. When they reached Vincent, Patricia placed Rebecca's hand in his, her emerald eyes fierce. "Take care of my girls, Vincent," she whispered, her voice cracking slightly. "With my life," Vincent promised, locking her gaze. The ceremony was short but deeply meaningful. They had both written their own vows. Rebecca went first, her voice shaking slightly with the raw depth of her emotion. "Vincent, for years ago you left, and I truly thought I had lost you forever. But life had other plans for us. It gave us Emma, this beautiful, stubborn miracle who brought us back together. Today I'm not just marrying the man I love. I'm marrying my best friend, my partner, my protector, and the father of my child. I promise to love you through everything. Through the hard times and the easy times, through the beautiful chaos of raising a 3-year-old, and whatever wild adventures come next. I promise to help you build a life that Emma will always be proud of. I love you. I always have. I always will." Vincent had to clear his throat, his eyes burning with unshed tears. "Rebecca," he began, his voice raspy. "I was utterly lost before I found you. I spent years building an empire, thinking that was what would make me worthy of having a life like this. But standing here today, I realize I had it completely backward. You were always what made me worthy. You and Emma are my true empire, my greatest achievement, my everything. I promise to be the man you both deserve, to be present for every single moment, big and small, to love you fiercely and protect you always, from the world and from myself, to be the strong, committed father Emma needs and the faithful husband you deserve. For years ago, I made the mistake of leaving. Today, I am making the unbreakable promise to stay forever." There wasn't a dry eye among the small group of guests. Even Vincent's tough-as-nails friend and former associate, Marco, was seen wiping his face discreetly. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Vincent took Rebecca in his arms and kissed her, pouring 4 years of longing, reconciliation, and profound love into the embrace. Their guests erupted in applause, and Emma ran up to them, demanding to be part of the hug. "We're married," Emma shouted happily. "We're a real family now." "We were always a real family," Vincent said, lifting her high in the air, a joy he had never known surging through him. "But now it's official." The reception was filled with laughter, vibrant dancing, and overwhelming joy. Emma refused to leave the dance floor, dragging both Vincent and Rebecca back again and again. The toast continued, delivered with raw, choked emotion. Francesca cried through her entire speech, tearfully recounting how she had prayed relentlessly for Vincent to find true happiness and salvation, and how seeing him with Rebecca and Emma proved those prayers had finally been answered, delivered like a miracle. As the final minutes of the old year evaporated, everyone bundled up and spilled out into the frigid air of the yard, the cold biting at their cheeks. They stood shoulder to shoulder, chanting the countdown in unison, a chorus of hope and shared joy. When the clock in the distance chimed the final stroke of midnight, Vincent pulled Rebecca close. He kissed his wife deeply, a promise and a fulfillment, just as a magnificent burst of fireworks exploded high above them, painting the winter sky in emeralds and golds. Emma, nestled securely between them, threw her small arms wide, shouting into the night air, "Happy New Year!" It was breathtaking. Everything finally was exactly as it should be. It was perfect. 12 months later, the world was softer, richer. It was Christmas Eve again. Vincent stood in the very same backyard, now softened by a fresh blanket of silent snow, watching the scene through the kitchen window. Inside, Emma, now a vibrant, verbose 4-year-old, was diligently helping her mother finish decorating their first truly family Christmas tree. Rebecca, radiant and grounded, was 8 months pregnant with their second child, a boy whose arrival they eagerly awaited and had already named Michael. Emma leaned down toward her mother's swelling belly, explaining with the utmost seriousness to her unborn baby brother exactly how the entire operation of Christmas worked, detailing the mechanics of Santa and the specific types of presents Michael should expect the following year. Vincent watched them, a fierce, protective warmth spreading through his chest, his heart so completely full it felt close to aching. The house itself had undergone a stunning transformation over the past year. Gone were the sterile, empty spaces. They had painted every room together, arguing gently over shades of blue and cream, hung dozens of candid family photographs, and filled every corner with comfortable furniture, laughter, and an undeniable sense of life. It wasn't just a structure. It was truly their sanctuary, their hard-won home. "Daddy, come and help us," Emma commanded suddenly, breaking his reverie. "I can't reach the high branches to put the shiny ones on." Vincent immediately walked into the warmth, scooping Emma up effortlessly and settling her on his shoulders. From her elevated perch, she placed the precious ornaments with meticulous care, narrating the specific history of each one. This one was a lopsided, glitter-covered creation she had made in preschool. This fragile glass ball was a gift from Grandma Francesca. And this simple silver bell was from their very first Christmas celebrated as a real, complete family. Rebecca came to stand beside Vincent, leaning her heavy weight against his side, one hand instinctively resting on the prominent curve of her belly. He wrapped his free arm carefully around her, mindful of the baby bump. "Can you believe it's been only 1 year?" Rebecca asked softly, her gaze fixed on the twinkling lights. "The best year of my entire life," Vincent affirmed instantly, lowering his head to kiss her temple, inhaling the scent of her hair. And somehow, miraculously, it just keeps getting better. With Vincent's steadying grip, Emma finally placed the glittering star atop the highest point of the Douglas fir, completing their project. She then insisted they all step back a respectful distance to admire the totality of their work. The tree glowed richly with lights and cherished memories, beautiful precisely because of its slightly crooked symmetry and mix-matched ornaments, perfect in its imperfection. "It's absolutely perfect," Emma declared definitively, nodding. "Just like us." Vincent looked at his daughter, then at his wife, and thought of the kicking son awaiting his arrival, feeling a wave of overwhelming, almost painful gratitude wash over him. He had squandered so many years chasing hollow things, building ruthless power, amassing cold wealth, believing that was the definition of success. But this silent, luminous moment right here, surrounded by love, this was genuine success. Tight, loving family, a home overflowing with warmth and laughter, a future stretching bright with genuine possibility. "Daddy," Emma said, tugging earnestly on his hand, her eyes wide, "tell us the story again." "What story is that, my love?" Vincent asked teasingly, though he knew the ritual by heart. "The story about how you found us on Christmas," Emma clarified, bouncing slightly. "How you came back to stay." Vincent picked her up, settling comfortably onto the plush couch, Rebecca sinking beside him. "Well, it was Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year ago," he began, his voice soft, intimate. "Snow was falling outside, a truly beautiful winter night, and I was walking down the street feeling lost, like something essential was missing from my life. And then you saw us," Emma interrupted excitedly, leaping ahead in the narrative. Even though she had heard this story, their family's founding myth, 100 times before. "And then I saw you," Vincent confirmed, stroking her hair. "The most beautiful, spirited little girl I had ever seen, holding her mother's hand. And I knew right in that moment, standing in the cold, that my whole life was about to fundamentally change." "Because we're magic," Emma stated matter-of-factly, resting her head on his shoulder. "Because you, my little girl, are pure magic," Vincent agreed, pressing a kiss onto her forehead. He looked at Rebecca, whose eyes were glistening with those happy tears she seemed to cry so often now, tears of pure relief and love. "Oh, both of you," she murmured, wiping her cheek. At that moment, Michael gave a strong, unmistakable kick inside Rebecca's belly, and they all chuckled, a warm, resonant sound. Even the baby, it seemed, wanted to be included in the retelling of the story. Much later that night, after Emma was finally asleep, dreaming soundly of sleigh bells, and Rebecca had retreated to the large, comfortable bed, Vincent stood alone in the quiet backyard, lifting his gaze to the silent, starry expanse. Snow began to fall gently around him, soft flakes mirroring the weather precisely 1 year ago when his entire trajectory had shifted forever. He had walked away from his old life entirely, severing every last tie. The legitimate businesses were now thriving under new, ethical management. The dark, dangerous operations were completely liquidated and gone. And he had never felt such profound, quiet peace. He coached Emma's chaotic little soccer team. He attended every single, often confusing, preschool event. He dedicated time every night to rubbing Rebecca's swollen feet when they ached from the weight of the pregnancy. He was diligently building something real, something enduring, something that truly mattered. "Vincent," Rebecca's low voice drifted from the doorway, pulling him back from his contemplation. "Come to bed. It's too cold for you to be out here now." Vincent turned toward the sound, seeing her silhouetted perfectly in the warm golden light spilling out from the house. There was his wife, his anchor, carrying his son, waiting patiently for him to come home. Behind her, He could clearly see the brilliant glow of their Christmas tree, the cheerful chaos of the family photos on the walls, the vivid, breathing life they had forged together. "Coming?" he murmured, walking the few steps back toward her. Back to the deep warmth, back to unwavering love, back to the safe harbor of home. As they finally climbed into bed together, Rebecca immediately settling her head upon his chest, his hand resting instinctively on her belly, feeling the gentle stirrings of their unborn son, Vincent reflected on the astonishing truth of how one chance, desperate meeting on a snowy Christmas Eve had granted him everything he had ever genuinely desired. He had spent a lifetime believing he needed to possess immense power to be validated and worthy. But Rebecca and Emma had quietly, steadfastly taught him a fundamentally different truth. Love was the only enduring power. Family was the only real, lasting wealth. And coming home, truly irrevocably coming home, was the greatest, most fulfilling success of all. "I love you," Vincent whispered into the comforting darkness, the words catching slightly in his throat. "I love you too, Vincent," Rebecca whispered back. "Merry Christmas, my love." "Merry Christmas, Rebecca." And somewhere, deep within the silence of the beautiful, transformed house, if you listened very carefully, you could hear the soft, faint sound of a little girl dreaming sweetly of Santa and sleigh bells and undeniable magic, safe and profoundly loved in the home her parents had built together. Their perfect, beautiful Christmas miracle.